ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program today. Thank you so much for being with us. Congratulations, you found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. We can't do this without you. Telephone number 870-275-9799. I'm going to give you the story coming up at the bottom of this hour about Mr. C.J. Gresham. C.J. went through, well, let's just say he's a liberty activist focused on the Second Amendment, focused on the concept. He's from Texas, and he's got a, I would say, pretty harrowing story, harrowing chain of events. Let me ask you something this morning. Would you ever consider, and I'm not encouraging this, I'm just asking you, many of you out there have asked this, would you ever consider getting arrested to prove a point and eventually enact change for the rest of your fellow citizens? Getting arrested by civil disobedience, for example. Let's say you actually know what your rights are, and you're going up against law enforcement officers that have the mentality of you may beat the charge, but you won't beat the ride. Would you be, and I think most of us, or a lot of us, maybe wouldn't be down for that. I mean, we've got to go to work. We can't take time off work. We got to put food on the table. There are some, though, who are maybe cut from a different cloth. I can't wait for you to talk to Mr. C.J. Gresham and let you hear his story. And you probably, I mean, it made national headlines, but this is something that's kind of been ongoing. It actually ended up spawning a group, Open Carry Texas, and we will be talking with him at the bottom of this hour. Coming up at the bottom of the 7 o'clock hour, we'll be talking with the president of the Family Council. Jerry Cox will be on the program. He was at the event yesterday, the memorial event at Little Rock, at the Capitol, remembering, honoring Senator Linda Collins and who she was, both politically and as, an individual. And wouldn't you know it, there were several people that spoke. Ken Yang spoke, but he also conducted a very, very good event. We also had her former assistant and aide, Aaron Hogan. Both of them came on the program the day after we found out about Senator Linda Collins' murder. And then there was some really good words said about Linda by Senator Missy Irvin and Senator Gary Stubblefield. I was really had a couple personal observations about what went on yesterday. I thought it was a good event, and I thought to myself that God was glorified by the event, and I'll tell you what I mean. Actually, I'll let you listen to what I mean. Here's Senator Missy Irvin. I want, before we get into this, I want you to look, those of you who can't see the screen, those of you watching or listening via terrestrial radio, you can't see what I'm talking about. Yesterday on our graphic for the week, because this is a tough week where people are still mourning and remembering Linda and how she was taken from us too soon, I have on the screen a word that says, "Hope does not disappoint." It is a quote from the book of Romans, chapter 5. And this verse was given to me and suggested to me yesterday about 3 or 4 in the morning, hey, I guess, a friend of mine was reading this, said, hey, this is applicable here. And so hope does not disappoint. That's what we put up there. And wouldn't you know, that's the very verse Senator Missy Irvin read from at the Capitol yesterday. Just so you know, I had no coordination between, myself and Senator Irvin at all. Just take a listen to this. This is Senator Missy Irvin yesterday at the memorial service for Senator Linda Collins.
Most about her. She was true to her views because of the deep belief in God and in His Word. She was a Christian, and she wasn't afraid to ruffle feathers to let you know about what His Word said about that issue. And so as I meditated on the many, many memories I have of Linda, from campaigning to our time here in the Senate and in the Capitol, it became very, very clear to me what I needed to do and say to you today. I opened this book, and that's where I get my comfort.
The Bible. She held
Linda would have wanted us to shout it and yell it from this dome of this Capitol. Jesus' words to us. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Linda would have wanted us to stay the course, to keep fighting for the truth, to have the courage to stand up and speak out for what is just and what is right in the eyes of God, to follow His word, to seek forgiveness, to be humble, to be kind, and to serve your neighbor. We honor her and all of those loved ones we have lost when we seek God's will, when we seek His love that we are to share with others, when we grant grace and mercy for those who are against us, when we are constant in prayer, constantly for the guidance of His Holy Spirit in all that we do and in all that we say. Linda would have wanted us to remember these words, and we rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. Not only so, but we also rejoice in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope, and hope does not disappoint us. Because God has poured out His love into our hearts by the Holy Spirit whom He has given us. Linda was a fire breather whose favorite color was red. And it's not lost on me that the church this past Sunday just celebrated Pentecost. May we all burn with the Holy Spirit to share God's love with each other, and that's how we honor Linda. We will miss you, Linda, but we will not forget you. We have to cling to the hope and promise God gives us as we struggle to understand this incredible tragedy. Your voice may have been taken away, but what you stood for will never be silenced. I came across something that she wrote.
Okay, stop.
And so I...
Very powerful stuff there from Senator Missy Irvin reading out of the book of Romans, out of the Bible. Pay attention to what she said there, because it's very significant. It's very significant. As she says, as we struggle to understand why this tragedy happened, why we have all of these questions. You ever think? Did you ever consider that if just one person? I know we want to say. In our humanity, we want to say, gosh, senseless. It was, she was murdered, meaningless. It's not meaningless. It's not meaningless. That's a lie. Ever think about this? If just one person, Joe, did you think about this? First of all, if Senator Collins had been with us today, nobody would have been at the Capitol. Those words, the word of God, would not have been spoken at that building, at that place. There would be people that hadn't turned to God for comfort in a time of suffering that actually gives Him glory. There would have been none of that. In matter of fact, if just one person If just one person opened the Bible and read it that otherwise wouldn't have. There is a larger plan at work. And we want to forget that. We are tempted to forget that. And yesterday, at that building, of all places, that's why I was so pleasantly surprised. Because as I've told you many times when I go into that building, it is not something that I enjoy. But yesterday, there was peace there. And I'm very thankful for that peace. I'm thankful that there was, and I was telling a friend last night, I hadn't seen in a while, who was there. I said, wow. I said, you know what? God was glorified today in this. And he said, yeah, I didn't really expect that, but you're exactly right. He was. And that's what Linda would have wanted as well. It's amazing if you stop and think about it. It was a great event yesterday. I want to thank Ken Yang for putting it on, or helping provide an avenue for the family to receive all the outpouring of the people that knew Linda politically, professionally, in her public service. And again, I want to remind you also of the supernatural element of this verse here. Unless it was even if it wasn't, unless it was a part of some Bible app. It wasn't part of. I have a Bible app that gives me a daily verse. My daily verse was not Romans 5 yesterday. Maybe there are other Bible apps whose daily verse was Romans 5, but it wasn't mine. These things happen quite frequently. Do not dismiss the fact that, at least for now, it appears that there was the same verse found its way to this program, also found its way to others, like Senator Missy Irvin, and just that stuff to me, I don't write off immediately as a coincidence. Our Western way of looking at things would want you to, but the longer I live, the more I think there's nothing that's a coincidence. I tend to think that. Telephone number 870-275-9799 if you would like to contribute to the conversation. We're going to forward ahead now. Yesterday, memorial event. See, this is why I love the event. I really think Ken Yang, I don't know who all he asked to speak that said yes or no or whatever, but I really think Senator Missy Irvin, she started her speech with personal notes of how she first came to know Linda on campaign trails and how they worked together, and it really was a sweet tribute and testimony, and it was good, and it was very personal, and then Gary was also personal, and I just think it was a good cross section of representatives, maybe of different groups in the Republican Party. I know that's not what it was about, but to me, I thought it was very well done. And this is what Senator Gary Stubblefield had to say about Linda yesterday at the Capitol in Little Rock.
It's an honor for me to be here today. I was in New Mexico last week when a guy called me and told me that they had found a lady in northeast Arkansas that they thought was Linda Collins. And I said, well, you're wrong. You can't be right. Because Linda was larger than life, and I didn't believe it. About an hour later, he called me back and he said, it's true. We have lost a ray of light in a dark world. Lynn and I were very close friends, and we shared a lot of things together. We went in the house together in 2010. Let me give you a little wisdom. Don't ever form an opinion of someone before you know them or you've talked to them. Because Linda said, she was a Democrat and I was a Republican, and she said, across the house chamber from me. And the first time I saw her, I thought, here's this beautiful blonde-headed lady. She carried herself so professionally, and I thought, she's got to be an elitist or an intellectual. I said, me, you know, this old country boy that grew up in the country poor, we probably not going to get along too well. So there was a couple of weeks, there was a group of us legislators going out to eat, and we were sitting at the table, and Linda was sitting right across from me, and one of the legislators asked me what branch was, and I began to tell him about where I was born and how I grew up, and how I grew up poor. And, you know, at night, my mother, what we had for supper was a pan of cornbread and milk, and we went barefooted all summer. And all of a sudden, this blonde-headed lady jumps in and she said, well, you was raised the same way I was raised. And I said, really? She said, and then I started hearing words like, y'all, and by golly, and that young man, and I thought, you know what? This girl more like Ellie Mae Clinton than she was. She's a whole lot more country than I ever imagined. And after that, we became very, very close friends. And I don't know one issue that came before us that Linda and I did not agree on. I admired her tenacity. I told her one time, I said, if you were a football player, you'd be a linebacker. No doubt. She would be a linebacker. And I want to say something to the family. I know what Linda is this morning. I know that because Linda and I had a lot of deep spiritual conversations. And Linda shared with me her testimony. And if you've ever accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you have testimony. That's your story. Your story is what your life was like before you accepted the Lord as your Savior. And how you come to know the Lord as your Savior. And how knowing Him has changed your life. That's your story. Linda had a story. And she shared it with me multiple times. So family, Linda's was Jesus this morning. She left a legacy that those of us that knew her so well will never forget. And if she could stand here this morning, she would tell us, you just keep fighting. Because she loved children, she loved the unborn, she could not stand injustice, she worked hard for justice, and I worked with her on all those issues. She was incorruptible. You could not buy Linda Collins. Those are the kind of people we need in this capital. You could not buy her. She had true values, core values, that were not debatable. She's going to be missed. I often thought, you know, we just got to celebrate Memorial Day. But if she had been in one of those landing crafts at Omaha, Utah, she would have been the first one off. No doubt in my mind. She would have been running, charging that German army. That was Linda. She knew she was right. Nothing was going to stop her. I will miss her, and my prayer is that God will pour out His grace and peace on her family today. Thank you all for
That's Senator
being
Gary
here
Stubblefield
and honoring her this way.
praying that God would pour out His grace and peace on the family of Senator Linda Collins. And a few highlights there. I know the audio's not perfect, but a few highlights. When I first met her, I thought she was a elitist intellectual based on her appearance. And then she opened her mouth, and I thought, well, gosh, she's more like Ellie Mae Clampett than Raquel Welch. A few other things. She's incorruptible. She could not be bought. I'm so glad that Senator Stubblefield said this because it needed to be said, because it suggests that there are people down there who can and have been bought. I'm glad he admitted the truth. Also a highlight, if Linda had been on one of those landing crafts at Normandy, she would have been the first one out of the boat. We're going to take a break. This is Conduit News. Don't go anywhere. You found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Joining me in studio, we have back with us Iris Stevens. Iris, how are you?
I'm just doing great. Thanks.
It's always great to have you on.
Well, it's always great to be here.
So Iris is the coordinator, the head of the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party. So how's that going?
That's going really well. We communicate with all of the Tea Parties across the state, and some of them across the country. And we find out we have really, really good meetings, and there are a lot of people jealous of how many people that we have showing up. And so we've got
it's dwindling other places,
it's
right?
dwindling, and I think, it takes a lot. It takes us a lot of hours to put together programs and stuff to interest people and whatnot, but it's been worth it.
That's good. That's good. So let's start with something I know you guys are organized against. We've covered sales tax elections across the state. Now we're kind of focused on what Jonesboro's trying to do, raise the sales tax by 1%. What are your thoughts on this?
When we were approached,
hey folks, it's me, Paul Harrell. I want to say hello to everybody out there who's listening. We appreciate you and your support, especially those listening on KFPW, the Marshall out of Fort Smith, 96.7 FM, 1230 AM. For all of our listeners, if you ever missed the program, you can get us online at conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews, or our YouTube channel. Just search for Conduit News and be sure to click the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications. Here at Conduit News Radio, we provide you multiple ways to listen to your #1 source for Arkansas news and politics. ConduitNews.com.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Hey, folks. All right, welcome back. We're broadcasting live over at facebook.com/Conduit News, as well as the YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com. All you got to do is just search for Conduit News, and then you click on it, and then you subscribe, click the little bell to receive notifications. You could also support the program on Patreon, $5 a month, gets you an extra bonus video. Jackie on Facebook writing, Linda never compromised her principles. Reggie on Facebook, Senator Stubblefield did her proud. Senator Missy Irvin and Senator Stubblefield did an excellent job. Gene, quoting scripture in the Marble Palace is refreshing, if only for a fleeting moment. Jackie, God always brings good from evil. That's... You're exactly right. Case in point is the entire religion of Christianity. First of all, using evil, depraved men to accomplish his purposes, but then using death itself to provide a way for people to be made holy before God through the death of Jesus Christ. Now that's pretty crazy. You ever think about that? Using death itself, using murderers who had murder in their heart, using the system itself. Now, if that doesn't show you who's really in control of things, then I don't know what will. Aside from the good news that it is for you personally, boy, does it ever demonstrate the majesty and glory of God to be able to use death itself, the ultimate physical barrier, at least from our perception, to provide a way for sinners to repent and be found in Christ. We are going to take a break. When we come back, we will be talking with Mr. C.J. Gresham, and I can't wait for you to meet him. I talked to him yesterday. It's going to be a great interview. Don't go anywhere, folks. Back in a moment.
Out this issue, I said I didn't close my mind to it because Jonesboro has needs, and that's unfortunately how we have to run government. But then the more information came out, the more I was just appalled at what they were trying to do, not necessarily the individual projects. And the Tea Party has always been strongly for the police and the fire. So I was happy to see that until I saw the limitations they were putting on the tax that would actually not have as much impact on the police and fire department as most of us think it should. There are a lot of people who think they should be getting the full 1%, but that's neither here nor there. It's just that when we looked at the programs, when we looked at how this was being run, it's essentially they're ramrodding it through over a period of summer when most people are, take their vacations, they're out doing things, they're not paying attention. Then the final vote will be September 10th. You've just gotten the kids back in school. You're doing ball games. You're doing, running here and there. You're getting, organized for the fall. And then we have the special election vote, which, the problems of special election vote.
I want to get into that here in a minute. But do it just before we get into the numbers. Just that. Is that an act of deception?
Oh, I think it's very deceptive. That's why we got involved. When I found out the whole story, initially I was just kind of, we need some, and these are not bad projects and what. Then I found out the whole story, and it made me really angry. You don't deceive people. If people knowingly go to the polls, and I'm talking about a lot more than 17% that normally show up in a special election. If people knowingly go to the polls, they have all of the information, and they want to vote in a 1% sales tax.
Go for it.
Hey, that's what democracy and republic is about. Exactly.
I agree.
And I have no problem with that. But it's the amount of deception we normally get, especially through special elections, that bothers me.
Yeah, like you said, doing it in the summer, and then nobody knows, they're out living their lives. And then you got, not to mention on top of the summer, then you have the average worker who thinks, well, I go to vote during a primary and a general election, like that's when I go, or every 2 years, not in the middle of September.
Exactly.
And the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics, and I know you have this article, but I pulled this up, low voter turnout and high pass rates. So they did a study from 1981 to 2016, and they found that when voter turnout, when a sales tax election is held in a general election, there's an average over from 1981 to 2016 of 44%. And so when 44% average turnout, the pass rate is 45%. So the tax increase only passes 45% of the time. If it's held in a primary, your voter turnout decreases to 26%, but it still has a 56% chance of passing. So better than 50%, better than a coin toss. But if you have in a special election, you have 19...
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
To the program, ladies and gentlemen. Telephone number 870-275-9799 if you would like to contribute to the program. Call or text. I want to introduce you to Mr. C.J. Gresham. C.J. is on the line. How are you, C.J.?
Hey, I'm doing great, Paul. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. It's great to talk to you, sir. The group, now you are with Open Carry Texas, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I wanted to, we'll go ahead and put that website up on the screen during the portion of the interview. I wanted you to tell your story today. I've already kind of teased it with our audience about, hey, are you willing to be civilly disobedient and even get arrested for your liberty and for the liberty of others? And I think a lot of us might be like, no, I got to go to work tomorrow, man. I got to put food on the table. But you not so much, sir. I want you to start from the beginning and tell us about your activism and how this all started for you.
Well, I was raised to love liberty. I remember growing up in the 80s and my dad taking me to concerts to fight against the PMRC, which was Tipper Gore's group that was trying to censor music and other media. And so we would go to concerts and we would sell T-shirts and try to get people activated in the election so that we could prevent that kind of stuff. So I've always believed in liberty. And then I joined the Army back in 1994 and served 21 years. And that oath meant something to me, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. It wasn't something that was just a rite of passage. And so it's something I've always believed in, is the Constitution of the United States and what it stands for and our founding principles. And back in 2013, anything spectacular or special. I was out on a hike with my son, helping him earn his Eagle Scout merit, his Eagle Scout ranking. All he had to do was get a hiking merit badge. That was the last thing he had to do for his requirements, other than his project. And I live out in the country in the middle of Texas. So we're out walking, like I always do. Anytime I'm walking around, I've always got my rifle on me. But this particular day, someone decided they were going to call the police. And a police officer showed up, and he didn't have his lights on, didn't announce himself or anything like that. He just walked up, and he says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Oh, we're hiking." And he walks up to me, and he grabs my rifle that I was carrying for self-defense. Again, we have hogs and other wild animals out here. And he says, "There's some reason why you've got this?" And there was a weird question for me because it threw me off. I always carry this thing. Every one of our tractors and trucks has a rifle in it. I carry an AR-15. That's my rifle. And I said, "Because I can?" Kind of in a weird questioning way. He's like, "Oh, okay." And he starts to take off my rifle. Well, again, I'm a combat veteran. You don't just grab someone's rifle without announcing yourself. So I grabbed my rifle as well, and I said, "Whoa, you're not going to disarm me." Well, at that point, I ended up with a gun to my head and thrown onto the hood of a police car. Turned on my camera because I realized, okay, this isn't right. So I turned on my camera and started filming. That video went viral of that arrest. I was arrested for resisting arrest, but there was no charge underlying it. And so what they did was they just kept changing the charges until they got something that would stick. Well, that incident started Open Carry Texas because I realized we have problems in the state of Texas as it relates to gun rights.
Yes.
And the fact that police think they can just walk all over you.
And at the time, the open carry laws in Texas had to do with rifles only. Is that correct?
Right, yeah. We were, at the time, we were one of only 6 states that did not allow open carry of handguns.
Wow. Okay, so...
A lot of people think we're a very pro-gun state, but we weren't.
So you started to release... Every time the government was making their argument, you released a section of your video that proved them wrong, and eventually the government said, we need to, put a gag order on everything? Tell us about that.
Right, so the police were talking to the media as this arrest kind of started getting a lot of attention. The police were telling the media, "Oh, it's not what CJ's saying," and they would put something out there that was a complete and bogus lie. So I would release a small little 30-second clip from the video that says, "No, it's not a lie. Look, here's the proof." And I would give that to the media. And then they would say something else, and I would give that another 30. And so I did this 3 times. 3 times I called out the police department for lying to the people. And after that, the prosecutors, because I was still waiting on my case, it took me about 10 months to get to court. And finally, they went to the judge and said, "Hey, we want to get a gag order." So my attorney came to me and says, "Hey, CJ, they're going to put a gag order on your video." I was like, "Well, they can't put a gag order on something that's released." So I just released the entire video, and I encouraged gun owners. I put it in gun groups, on Facebook, on everywhere. And I said, "Look, download this video, put it on your channel. I don't care what you do with it. Just get it out there because they're trying to hide the truth." And that's how it went viral.
Wow. And so, but eventually they got you. Essentially, and I love law enforcement. I think law enforcement, they do a great job. Unfortunately, sometimes when it comes to guns especially, there's a mentality law enforcement doesn't believe that an armed society is a polite society, and they come up to a guy like you, CJ, and they're like, "Well, you may beat the charge, but you're not going to beat the ride." That seems to be what they tried to do to you.
That's exactly what they did to me. That's why they kept changing it. I was eventually convicted for interference, which in Texas is so broad that, I mean, literally, if a police officer comes up and says, "Drop your drawers," and you say no, that's interference. So it's a Class B misdemeanor. It'll be on my record forever because of the sham trial. They brought up an anti-gun liberal judge out of Houston all the way up here to Central Texas because no one in my county would take the case, no judges. And so they went judge shopping and found one that would do what they wanted to do.
Wow. So all to prove this point. Okay, so what happened after that? Because I understand this, like you said, it sparked Open Carry Texas, and it got more people involved, but that wasn't the end of, or the arrests and things like that.
Yeah, so I went to the NRA after my arrest, and I says, look, we need to do something about open carry in the state. We're one of only 6 states that doesn't allow the open carry of a handgun. I can walk anywhere with my rifle. And the NRA told me no one cares about open carry.
Of course they do.
And that's why, another reason why open carry Texas was started. So we decided, okay, well then we'll play it our way. And what we decided to do, and many people probably remember the stories from 2013 and 14 of all the rifle-toting Texans that are walking all over the place into Home Depot and Hardee's carrying their rifles. And the purpose of that was to get the legislature in the state to realize this is legal, but if you see my itty-bitty .380 pistol, then I'm a criminal. Mm-hmm. And what happened was we got more arrests. By November, we had already had 19 arrests. And so a bunch of veterans got together on Veterans Day, went up to the Capitol in Austin, and decided we were going to protest the fact that law enforcement was arresting law-abiding citizens for no other reason than ignorance. And we were going to try and raise awareness at the Capitol of that fact. And so I got about 32 veterans together, and we just marched to the Capitol. Well, while we were at the Capitol, literally as we were getting ready to start speaking, the Capitol DPS troopers came up and told us we had to leave. Again, 19 arrests in the state for lawful activities. All charges were dropped against all 19 of them, but that didn't stop them from having to bail out and go to jail. Well, I refused to leave because I wasn't breaking any laws, and I demanded to know why am I being told to leave? What law am I breaking? And it was all about, I'm telling you to leave now. And I said, well, why? What law am I breaking? I'm telling you to leave. I ended up, again, getting arrested for criminal trespassing. And so they just made up a law. I was where I was allowed to be doing illegal activity, and they decided to arrest me for criminal trespassing. Then, that was in November. That took me a year to get those charges dropped. I went to court every month only to be reset, and finally those charges were dropped. And again, it was resisting arrest was the second charge, because I'm not going to allow anybody to unlawfully arrest me. I'm going to fight back. And that's what caused me to get all these resisting arrests. All three of my arrests from 2013 to 2018 were all with resisting arrest, and then they had a whole bunch of other stuff added to it.
Wow.
Last year I got arrested again because we were protesting a police department that was actually drawing down. If somebody called the police because somebody was open carrying a handgun, they would arrive on the scene. And these were our activists. This was Open Carry Texas, not doing anything. We don't do anything against the law. We're very peaceful. We're not in your face. We don't shove things. Even when we took our rifles into businesses back in 2013 and 14, we always got permission from the business first. And yet people still would call the police. So we were always very respectful of the public. And I was in Olmos Park, which is a San Antonio suburb. We were just standing on a street corner because we wanted to see, okay, is it true? It just seemed odd to us that someone would say that if you just open carry, the police are literally going to surround you with guns pointed at your head and order you on the ground. I just didn't believe it. So I went personally to San Antonio, and we did just that. And sure enough, the police arrived. They're pointing guns at us. They're ordering us on the ground. I had talked to the police chief the day before, and he assured me, no, that doesn't happen here.
Wow.
And then it happens to me. Well, then they try to arrest me again, and I'm like, no, you're not touching me. And so I'm backing up. I'm refusing to allow the officer to grab me so that he can put me in handcuffs. And I end up getting tased in the back by the police chief himself, the guy I had just spoken to 24 hours prior.
You're kidding me. Oh, my gosh.
No. And cracked my head open on the concrete when I landed because I stiffened up like a board and went flat back. I mean, I didn't have anything to stop my head from hitting the concrete. And blacked out. We're still dealing with migraine issues, and we're suing that police department. But that's just some of the, but after that, they changed their ordinances that were unlawful. They had an unlawful ordinance that prevented open carry of rifles in the city, but that violated state law, and that's what I had told the chief about, that your ordinance violates state law, so it's in effect, it's null. Nobody has to obey it because it's unlawful. And then the city council repealed that after I got tased.
So at this point, we're talking with C.J. Gresham. You can go to Open Carry, is opencarrytexas.org.
Yes, sir.
So C.J., I guess all of these events, I'm sure, made your group stronger, and then you actually were able to get the people's representatives, not necessarily the law enforcement, but the politicians in Texas, to make some changes to the laws. Tell us about that.
So our first legislative session, Texas meets only every 2 years in a legislative session, so they're not always screwing with our liberty. They're only doing it every 2 years. So 2015 was our first session. We were able to get open carry passed. We got campus carry on college universities passed. I was also a student at the time. I just retired from the Army. And so we got those two laws passed. We got a bunch of clarification laws passed this last session, and in this session got a few. We didn't get much this session at all. That was largely because of our representatives. But we're over 50,000 people strong. I think our biggest success is not necessarily the laws, although those are great that we got some major legislation passed. But we have gotten hundreds of businesses. We've encouraged them to take down their no gun signs by educating them on the statistics of law-abiding citizens who carry firearms. We've gotten government entities to stop violating the law by putting up signs and keeping guns out of government buildings. We've gotten local ordinances changed in dozens of cities that protect Texans' gun rights that used to go unopposed. A lot of these laws have been in place since the 90s or even earlier, and were just never challenged. And finally, here's a group that's coming around challenging them, and if they didn't change their ordinances, then we took them to court. We went to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General forced them to obey the law. And that's the power of our organization, is the people itself. We don't have any lobbyists. We don't have any paid members at all.
Wow.
What we do is we activate people who are willing to take a stand and do something for liberty instead of just throwing money at it.
And that's what it is. And I would imagine that the different members of your organization have the ears of their local politicians. You know what I mean? The more people you have spread out over Texas, and are they making relationships with their lawmakers, and does that seem to be the driving force?
It's kind of twofold. So with the lawmakers that we can have relationships with, yes, absolutely. We've got a really good reputation among lawmakers. We've also got a really bad reputation among those that don't like us. Mm-hmm. And so we get laws changed because people like us, and we get laws changed because if we don't change these laws, Open Carry Texas is going to hold a big rally here, and they're going to bring their guns. Let's avoid that. And so it's I'm okay with both ways. I'm okay with them being afraid of us, and I'm okay with them liking us and recognizing that we're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Can I ask you, again, we're talking with C.J. Gresham, can I ask you about the NRA? You approach the NRA, they say, well, no one cares about open carry. That's not true. Here in Arkansas, we are a constitutional carry state now. We've got a law that was changed in 2013. We've got law enforcement that have been slow to get on board, but slowly they are. Then we had a court decision affirming that possession of a weapon in Arkansas is decriminalized. And
right.
So it's really, really good. But can I ask you about the NRA? I mean, I know they've done some good things in the past, but it seems like they are, let me just say, it seems like they think that regulation and infringement on the Second Amendment is going to happen, so they might as well be the ones that get to write the regulations. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me say first, I am a Patron Life member of the NRA, but I've given lots of money to the NRA, but I will never give them another penny. Here's what I have learned about the NRA just since the last 6 years that I've really, really been paying attention and actually doing something. The NRA is one of those organizations that they'll go to, this is my impression, they'll go to politicians and they'll say, okay, what are you going to give us this year? Oh, well, let's do this. Okay, then we'll fight for that. Instead of saying, looking at the landscape and going, okay, where are the infringements? Let's fight the infringements. So I think the NRA is more concerned with their relationship with politicians and their access to politicians than they are with actually fighting, which really annoys me because, again, as a Patron Life member, our bumper sticker is stand and fight. That's what the bumper sticker says when you get the NRA. And yet they don't stand and fight. They'll only fight for what the lawmakers will give them. This year we got nothing. Absolutely no expansion of liberty whatsoever this year, and the NRA is sending out emails saying what a successful session we had. Constitutional carry has died 3 sessions in a row. The NRA has done nothing but fight against it because they want to pass their little bills that the politicians have said, hey, this is what we're willing to pass this session. And instead of the NRA going, no, that's not good enough, they say, okay, we'll take that, and that's what we'll go ahead and fight for this year. And that way, because it's about access, they can protect the legislators' grades, and the legislators can continue to give them access. And there's going to be money involved in the form of endorsement. Mm-hmm. So for the first time this year, we're going to be giving grades to politicians. And it's going to be a completely different grading system than what the NRA does. The NRA picks and chooses bills. We don't. We put a whole list of every gun bill on our website, whether we oppose or support it, and that's what our grading system is on, whether it passed or not. And if you're a committee chair and these bills did not pass that we said were priorities, then your highest grade, no matter how pro-gun you are, your highest grade, if as a committee chair you killed this bill, is going to be a B. That's it. You automatically lose a letter grade. It's like missing 3 days of class in college. You automatically lose a letter grade if it's unexcused.
Wow. Yeah, man, and I think that's the kind of stuff that certainly gets their attention, and sometimes even more disdain. But, when it comes to this issue, I mean, people understand that they don't need to be disarmed. I think people understand the importance of protecting themselves, property, your natural right of self-defense, self-preservation. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. And I'm glad, I'm glad what you said about the NRA. I kind of feel that way as well. And I think also I would just add, there's also when you give, when you're too optimistic about what has happened, you send out those emails, what a successful session. That also incentivizes people to continue giving money because they think, they're doing something on my behalf when in reality that may not be the case. And I think.
Oh no, they fought against us.
Really?
No, they've actually fought against us for good bills. For example, a bill that would have protected open carriers from law enforcement harassment. Specifically, the NRA fought against because they also are in bed with the police lobby. And again, I've changed my stance. I come from a law enforcement background. I used to have absolute reverence for law enforcement. I don't. I have reverence for good cops, but I do not have reverence for law enforcement. And so I treat everyone the way that they treat me. If you come up to me with an attitude, you're going to get an attitude in return. That's a change in my life. I didn't used to be that way. I would always give respect, even when they were rude to me. Not anymore. I respect good cops, and I respect good cops only. But I can no longer respect the profession because I've seen what it does to liberty. And the NRA they bend over backwards for law enforcement, not for people.
C.J. Grisham with Open Carry Texas, it's great to meet you. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for standing for liberty, sir. And I would love to have you on again sometime.
Yes, sir. Anytime. You've got my number, and you guys keep up the fight there in Arkansas. We followed y'all closely. As a matter of fact, when we were fighting for open carry, we went to the city of Texarkana, and we had people on we had a picture of people with pistols on the Arkansas side of the border and people with rifles on the Texas side of the border, showing the difference between the two.
That's fantastic. I love it. That's great. Well, yeah, maybe I can get a copy of that photo. I'd love to see that. So.
Sure, I'll send it to you.
All righty. Thank you, CJ. Appreciate it. Be safe. Folks, and this segment was brought to you by the Patriots VAC 746. They are on a mission to educate the people of Arkansas about constitutional carry. You do not need a permission slip to carry here in the state of Arkansas from the government, open or concealed. Firearms have been decriminalized. Now, that does not mean that you can carry in any business. A private business can still put up a sign, say, no guns allowed. You got to respect that. Or you're subject to, prosecution or being asked to leave or whatever. But the bottom line is this. You got to get the word out because this is about protecting you and your family, your property. A lot of people don't know. I mean, can you imagine if you think you have to have a permission slip, but you really don't, and then you're walking around unarmed? And something tragic happens and your neighbors didn't know the law, that they just didn't get around it. I don't want to carry today because I don't have a permission slip to carry. You don't need one. You don't need one. We're going to take a break, folks, and you can find out more. Go to Facebook.com, search for Patriots of Act 746, and learn about your rights here in Arkansas. Back in a moment.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Percent voter turnout on average from 1981 to 2016, and a 77% pass rate.
It's the exact reason they have special elections. A lot of people don't realize this. This is not an emergency. For Jonesboro to do this is not an emergency. And most people do not realize that the reason they do special elections is because the people who support it, they know all about it. They're usually in on the very beginnings of it.
Yeah.
They go out and vote for it, but the vast majority of other people don't. And that's why it has this pass rate. So that's the reason that we have special elections in this state.
Yeah,
and it has really caused a lot of problems. I know you've got that information too about how it's gradually since 1981 on has raised our tax rates, especially in these localities. Until, let's say, I believe we are third, and this is part of that same report, which is excellent. Arkansas has the third highest combined state and local tax rate, third highest in the country. Tennessee has the highest. It's 9.46. If Jonesboro were
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, here we go. Hey, a little bit more news. There's kind of some pretrial hearings going on. We covered a little bit of this. Former Senator Jeremy Hutchinson took the stand yesterday, and his former lover took the stand. He took the stand on Monday. His former lover took the stand yesterday. Wait till you hear this. And the reports seem to confirm a long time hush rumor that nobody wanted to say. But now we actually have this in print because it was said on a stand. Has to do with abortion. I'll tell you that story next.
Of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 1230 AM KBTM Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
raises this 1%, our tax rate, sales tax, will go from 8.50 to 9.50, which would then be higher than Tennessee's, the highest in the country. Now, keep in mind, this is average. There are cities localities that have higher, but this is the average. So Jonesboro would actually have the highest tax rate, of any place around, except for, these other cities who've raised it.
Right, and Tennessee has no income tax.
No income
so
tax, exactly.
You can justify that in a way. It's a consumption tax. But, you have Jonesboro, for example, that, we got a statewide audience. I don't know if people know this, but Jonesboro likes to think of itself as a competitor to Fayetteville. I think the universities have something to do with that.
Absolutely.
And so you have people around here that look across the state and they see, well, Fayetteville's sales tax rate is this, so why can't ours be? Well, look at the difference in your, Democrats that represent Fayetteville in the state house versus the Republicans that represent Jonesboro.
Exactly, and they have a little bit of difference too. I knew back when KAIT ran a 2-part special on Fayetteville. Those of us in the Tea Party, I went, whoops, something's going down, and it wasn't a week and a half, and we got the information about the sales tax.
Hang on a second. You're telling me that the local ABC affiliate KAIT here, they want.
I don't know if they were complicit or somebody just came to them and said, let's do a comparison of Fayetteville and Jonesboro, because they're close in size, even though Fayetteville is significantly, bigger. And they continue to say, Arkansas is like 89 square miles. Well, keep in mind, they annexed everything. This is hyperbole. They annexed everything from Paragould to Wallenburg, and that's why, we have problems in that area. But I just knew when KIT was running this, there was an ulterior motive, and sure enough, it came up, about a week and a half later.
That's
keep in mind, they want us to do a sales tax. But look at Fayetteville. They have 3 major corporations. They've got the Hunt, the Tysons, and Walmart. And, talk about bike trails, which, of course, everybody's going to use.
Oh,
of course,
yeah.
Across the country, nobody uses them, but everybody's going to use bike trails. So, really, we're subsidizing some people's hobbies when you want to put in all these hundreds of millions of dollars worth of bike trails. But listen to this. Walmart's foundation provided in Fayetteville in the area provided $74 million for the construction of bike trails over the last 10 years. That's $10 million, $7 million a year.
Good for them. Okay.
Exactly.
Well, fantastic.
But where's our corporate sponsorship?
Yeah.
Not one person in this whole sales tax stuff has mentioned the concept. Let's do some corporate sponsorship. Now, I don't want to, hit up Wallace Fowler or anything, but we've got a lot of money in this area. Why are we not asking these people, would you subsidize, would you contribute to bike trails, would you contribute to this or whatever? Instead, it's just, let's come to the taxpayer and take it out of your pocket.
Yeah, I guess the money up here is just not as progressive as the money over there. We need bike trails and bike lanes and everything else. And, I get it. This is what's fascinating to me. I mean, if I know there's bikers here, and they're passionate, but you're right. It is kind of a taxpayer subsidy of a hobby that very few people use, and that's fine. I mean, that just is what it is. I mean, we could pick anybody's hobby. I mean, why
but
not?
Notice they're not subsidizing my hobby. They're not supplementing my daughter's hobby.
Exactly.
We have to look at things like that. And when somebody comes and tells me, "Well, I really like bicycle trails, and they're just wonderful and everything," you think, well, why don't you register your bicycles, those $5,000 bicycles, for $50 a year?
Yeah.
And all of those who are really seriously interested in bicycling.
Then you're fun. Then you're
helping fun. At least you've got skin in the game.
My hobby is pit barbecue. So do I want every park around here to have a hand welded smoker so I can support my hobby? No,
exactly.
No.
But that's essentially what we're doing. And I know you've got the total number of projects they want to do, I think, is way overblown. And there's another area that involves that. Listen to what they're doing. This is according to the ordinance itself. This money would be used to fund the acquisition, construction, repair, equipping, and improving of capital improvements of a public nature for the arts, aquatics, beautification, libraries, museums, park facilities, recreational facilities, sidewalks, and trail systems. Is there anything left that I haven't mentioned?
I don't think so.
See, that's the problem. This amount of money, and then you consider 12 years down the road when this tax is supposed to sunset, these these projects will still require
Or
staffing
what
and
about
maintenance.
what about a toll for the bike trails?
Oh, well, that's
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
870-275-9799, the telephone number. You want to contribute to the conversation today, we would encourage you to do so. Joe's working on the meme of the day. We're going to throw that up here at about 7:50-ish when we come back from break. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we'll be talking with the president of the Family Council, Jerry Cox. Be back on the program. We're going to be talking with him about the late Senator Collins, Linda Collins, and what she meant to him and what he thinks she meant to the state. Can't wait to talk to him about that. If you missed the first hour, we talked about the ceremony that happened yesterday at the Marble Palace. You need to check that out. It was good. The full video is available on the Conduit News Facebook page if you want to watch it from yesterday. I would encourage you to do that as well. It was very good. We just played a few of the highlights. It's all in the Hour One podcast. You can get it at conduitnews.com. So, Arkansas corruption. Let's take a look at this. Yesterday I told you a lot of stuff. The Arkansas Democrat Gazette was referencing the alligator incident where former Senator Jeremy Hutchinson was hit in the head. The police were called by an alligator after his lover. They were in a fight. His girlfriend, threw it at him. Domestic violence, that sort of thing. But we also talked about it's all about this laptop. Apparently, there's a lot of incriminating evidence in this laptop that started and led to the indictment of Senator Hutchinson for tax evasion and campaign finance problems. Of course, this is separate from the other indictment having to do with him being bribed by Medicaid entities, your taxpayer dollars, so that he passes bills favorable to the Medicaid entities that are, again, funded by your taxpayer dollars. See how that works there? But here we're finding out that there was, it seems like this was kind of an ongoing thing. A lot of people tell me it was common knowledge that if you pay Senator Hutchinson, X amount of dollars, that he can get legislation passed. And, of course, the loophole was you can do this because he's an attorney. And we're finding out more of this, specifically the $20,000 a month that Senator Hutchinson was making from trial attorney John Goodson. The speculation there was that he, was trying to manage or kill any potential tort reform legislation that would go through. The girlfriend in question here is Julie McGee. Now, Hutchinson is now accusing Julie McGee of stealing this laptop that has all the incriminating evidence. Julie McGee took the stand yesterday and said, no, it's my laptop. Now, understandably, multiple reports say that Julie had problems answering basic questions and timelines and contradicted herself a few times, but she is still asserting that this is my laptop, so I didn't violate any rules. Hutchinson's jury trial on the wire fraud and tax fraud charges is going to start, or at least scheduled to start, July the 8th. The report goes that back in 2012, Julie took 2 laptops and mobile phones and a computer hard drive to the FBI, saying that there was proof that her on-again, off-again boyfriend had been using campaign finance funds to further their relationship, and was Now, think about that. We need to underline that. This is going to be relevant later. Had been using campaign finance funds to further their relationship. What does further their relationship mean? And using campaign finance. Okay. Also accepting money from attorney John Goodson. Again, and this is a headline here from Linda Satter. Senator's ex-lover gave the FBI the computer, from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Let's see here. FBI agent James Coleman said that McGee gave him photos to look at, also emails, saved text messages. And then there's another FBI agent, Mike Lowe. He testified yesterday that he took over the case file, and the investigation was focused on possible kickback or bribery schemes that Hutchinson's now been indicted up for somewhere else. Has nothing to do with John Goodson. John Goodson hasn't been charged with the crime. None of that. I'm just saying this details a pattern that you can now apply to Tom and Bontia Goss. That's all I'm saying. After, let's see here, he said he was not asked or instructed by Mr. Goodson to do anything for the money. Hutchinson said Goodson would talk to him like a dog, and then after 2 years, Goodson started reducing payments to Hutchinson to $7,000 a month and then to $5,000 a month. Again, Lowe said Hutchinson explained how he began working for Goodson. After working for a Texarkana law firm, things were not going well. And so eventually Goodson said, here's $20,000 a month. The agent said that Hutchinson acknowledged it looked really bad, that he took a lot of money from Goodson to drum up business when he never actually steered any business towards Goodson. At the time, payments constituted Hutchinson's sole income outside of his state salary. Linda Satter goes on, although Hutchinson said the laptop contained spreadsheets on which he tracked his campaign expenditures, and that would clear him, meaning the laptop, he needs it because there's exculpatory evidence on it. Lowe testified that he didn't recall seeing any spreadsheets on the computer. Among the screenshot captured text messages the FBI found on the Sony laptop turned in by Julie McGee, again his lover, was a message Hutchinson sent to his wife, Stephanie Hutchinson, on June 20th, 2011, when they were arguing about the amount of time he should spend with their children. In describing how busy he was, he wrote, "If I lose the election, I will probably lose Goodson's money." Now that's interesting. Why would you would lose the election? Oh, because you're no longer a legislator, and you wouldn't be as valuable at that point. Got it. Boy, what a light bulb that just went off. McGee testified that Hutchinson regularly forwarded her conversations that he had with his ex-wife to demonstrate that she was a priority in his life, meaning, you know how it goes. You're intimate with your wife, then you're intimate with another woman, and then, the other woman wants to know what you're saying to your wife, and so, why not share intimate conversation? You know how it goes. Lowe said he first interviewed Hutchinson on June 11, 2014. He acknowledged not letting on at first that Hutchinson was the target. Then apparently Hutchinson got wise that he was the target and decided to squeal on, Rusty Cranford. And in this case, John Woods decided to squeal on John Woods. And then they closed the investigation. But this is not where the story ends. There was a lot of information that was said yesterday at this trial, folks. Listen to the end of this article, again by Linda Satter. She testified that the laptop in question was later stolen during a break-in at her apartment, which prosecutors say makes Hutchinson's claim that the laptop held exculpatory information on him a little too convenient. Twice during McGee's testimony Tuesday, as she sat on the witness stand wearing a red beret, red high-heeled shoes, and a black and white skirt, and talking about her work as an artist, she blurted out a reference to, quote, the abortion, end quote, but wasn't asked to explain further by attorneys for either side. She said Hutchinson had given her some money for, quote, the abortion. Tim Dudley, attorney for Hutchinson, refused to comment about the matter. Interestingly enough, there was also a reference at some point in this story originally about a potential conversation that happened with a member of the Hutchinson family about how she would be taken care of, how she was afraid for her life. This is Julie McGee here. There's more on that, though, in the Arkansas Times. They do a little bit better job. I'm not really sure why the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette had one version of the story with information in it that doesn't appear to be in the second version. But, anyway. Julie McGee, the former girlfriend of ex-state senator, now back to, this is what, Benji Hardy of the Arkansas Times, took the stand Tuesday morning in a pretrial hearing in U.S. District Court. Let's see here. 3-hour testimony. Their on-again, off-again relationship. Said that Hutchinson used campaign funds to provide her with gifts, vacations, and a fake job. When asked by federal prosecutors whether she actually performed work for the campaign, McGee responded, "If keeping him sexually satisfied is considered campaign work, then yeah, I worked for the campaign. I was," cue the song, "working hard for the money." So in 2012, McGee approached the FBI about Hutchinson's alleged financial improprieties after one of their many disputes, setting in motion a sprawling investigation. Hutchinson is charged with spending $150,000 in campaign money on personal expenses. Was any of that campaign money used for an abortion by chance? I got to tell you, I can't. This is the first time it's ever been in print. It's in print 2 locations. So according to reports now, we have Jeremy Hutchinson's ex-lover saying that Jeremy Hutchinson gave her money for an abortion. Now, this guy's a Republican. This guy would tell you that he's pro-life all the way, at least in campaign material. And so, yeah, obvious hypocrisy here and everything else. It could be that this is what actually earned him the scorn. The articles yesterday said that when Julie McGee went back to the apartment that they shared, she wrote expletives all over the wall right after she made off with the kayak. There was a kayak involved that she stole. Well, it's probably one of those things where if it's your hobby, you're pretty enthusiastic about it, so I want the kayak. Well, this was years ago, Joe. So, could it be that you use campaign funds to pay for an abortion? I mean, that is, talk about campaign finance violations. That's crazy, man. And that's tragic. And, can you be forced to have an abortion? Well, no, but you can certainly be convinced to have one. Somebody gives you the money, and then you very much regret it after the fact. That might earn the scorn of a woman. A turbulent relationship. Julie McGee, according to the Arkansas Times, said Tuesday that she and Hutchinson first met in 2010 when she was working at a Bryant restaurant, Luigi's Pizza and Pasta. He was married at the time. They began a relationship, and when McGee needed a place to stay, she'd been physically assaulted by an ex-boyfriend. Hutchinson offered her a condo in downtown Little Rock, owned by his father, Tim, and his father's wife. McGee said Hutchinson came up with a plan to say she was working for his campaign to avoid suspicion, but when they were seen together in public, Hutchinson and a friend of his, Bill Vickery, arranged for her to be paid through a company called the Gordian Group. She said the company's now defunct, according to state records. Hutchinson left a box of campaign checks at the condo so that she could use them when he wasn't around. So he's using campaign money as an allowance for his mistress. We did go and put out. Now, here's the thing. There were probably people that gave individual contributions that didn't know that was what that money was going for. But then there may be a lot of lobbyists that didn't care where the money went. Let's see here. We did go out we did go and put out signs together, she said, if she ever did any campaign work. I took a mannequin once to a campaign headquarters in Benton. So they have all these communications between laptops. They used money to buy cruise tickets. McGee, here it is. Arkansas Times, a little bit more lengthy here. McGee also twice referenced an abortion allegedly paid for by Hutchinson, though attorneys did not ask her to elaborate. Seems like maybe she wanted this information to get out. She said she later told the FBI that the senator had a campaign fundraiser so that he could pay for the abortion. During the subsequent recess, Hutchinson's attorney, Tim Dudley, declined to answer the question. And the Arkansas Times notes Hutchinson adopted an anti-abortion position in his campaigns and his votes in the legislature. Now, this is tragic. I mean, this is absolutely tragic when you think about it. I mean, this is the loss of a human life. That's what this is, apparently, according to these reports. I mean, hypocrisy aside. I mean, we're all hypocrites, depending on what issue, But this is tragic. They also had frequent arguments, which sometimes became physical. Here it is. In September, they had a fight at his condo, which culminated in her hitting him with a stuffed alligator head and being charged with third-degree battery. But they, apparently they made up. Let's see here. Keep going. McGee said she told the FBI about Hutchinson's alleged personal use of campaign money along with alleged legislative actions that he performed for the benefit of Goodson, Texarkana attorney. I talked about Jeremy getting money for trying to change a word in a law so that John Goodson could file class action lawsuits that he couldn't previously file before. Wow. That's a big thing. Now, again, there are multiple reports also that say that, Julie McGee on the stand contradicted herself, couldn't remember dates and times, and that sort of thing. Let's get down. Let's see here. Because it mentioned, here it is. This is also very, very interesting, and I don't put this past her. Apparently, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson's ex-lover has been afraid for her life, which I can't. I mean, with recent events, listen to this. I think this is reasonable. This is reasonable to be afraid. McGee was sometimes a difficult witness. She often contradicted herself. Quote, I'm sure, let's see here, such as telling defense attorney that she had engraved her name on the Sony laptop. Quote, I'm sure I did, she said. When asked the second time, she backed off. I'm not absolutely positive I engraved it or not. Possibly. She remained resolute that the laptop had belonged to her. The defense also brought out a text message McGee sent to an FBI agent in the case on Monday in which she questioned the integrity of Judge Baker, suggesting the court might be corrupt. She mentioned the recent death of State Senator Linda Collins and said she was afraid of Hutchinson and especially his ex-wife Stephanie due to an email McGee said she once received that she found threatening. I'm just reporting the news, folks. I'm just the messenger here. But that email, I think, there were actually at least some quotes from that email that I think made the original Gazette article about, quote, being taken care of. I know I didn't dream reading that, and I took screenshots of some of those, but I didn't get that particular quote. We've gone way over, folks. What do you think about Senator Jeremy Hutchinson? What do you think? We already knew a lot. We suspected a lot. I had heard this rumor about using campaign funds for an abortion for a long time, but I could never report on it. But now, here it is. We'll be back in just a moment.
Are you tired of having to fight the crowds at mega stores just to save money grocery shopping? Well, no more. Bill's Cost Plus is the new way for you to save big. Bill's is still your meat store with the same quality certified Angus beef you've come to expect with Bill's 6 picks for just $24. And Bill's carries a full variety of national brands with everything you need. The only difference is you're saving more than ever. Visit BillsCostPlus.com. Follow them on Facebook and Twitter. Bill's Cost Plus now open in all 3 Jonesboro locations.
This is NASCAR driver Kurt Busch, and I am proud to support our nation's veterans. Do you know you can get a faster decision on your disability compensation claims by filing an electronic fully developed claim, or e-claim, on e-benefits? Take it from a guy who lives his life in the fast lane. Faster is better. Visit ebenefits.va.gov today to learn more.
E-claims, online VA claims made simple. A message from the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Hey folks, it's me, Paul Harrell. I want to say hello to everybody out there who's listening. We appreciate you and your support, especially those listening on KFPW, the Marshall out of Fort Smith, 96.7 FM, 1230 AM. You know, for all of our listeners, if you ever missed the program, you can get us online at conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews, or our YouTube channel. Just search for Conduit News and be sure to click the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications. Here at Conduit News Radio, we provide you multiple ways to listen to your #1 source for Arkansas news and politics. ConduitNews.com.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Quinnipiac poll has Joe Biden leading Donald Trump by 13 points in the 2020 presidential race. President has gained support, though, with Hispanic and black voters from this time, in 2015 when they took a similar poll. Well, we've been here before. Are we really going to do this again? Are we really going to do this again? 13 points, Biden beating Trump. Do you really believe that? I mean, I don't even want to hear about it. Like, the polls were so wrong last time. But here we go. We'll wait and see. We're going to find out, though, that Joe Biden was in on this Russia collusion hoax the whole time as well. Oh, yeah, here it is. The meme of the day a few weeks ago. Joe Biden is already leading Trump by 8 points. Hey, I've seen this one. Back to the Future meme. Yeah. Yeah, we've been here before. We'll be back in a moment. Resolution that was proposed, that did pass, affirming the Republican Party platform and encouraging all politicians who are members of that committee to, vote for things like the power of faith in God, lower taxes, to produce economic growth or freedom, the right to keep and bear arms. And it had trouble passing. It passed with 2/3 vote, but for example, Senator John Cooper, who I know is facing a primary opponent next year, Dan Sullivan, State Representative Sullivan, he spoke against the resolution and said that it was unconstitutional or something.
He had some of the most amazing comments in his speech. First of all, it was essentially a cobbling together of comments from documents, historical documents and things. But when he claimed that it really is unconstitutional, because we would be expecting representatives and senators to take an oath, a loyalty oath, which is ridiculous. It's simply a resolution that, please, legislators, support our principles, support the Republican principles. And he did about a 10-minute speech where he said, essentially aligned this kind of action to being subversive. And he says the first president cautioned against the dangers of political parties, and went on from there as if the very fact that we were political parties, and
he's a member of it.
And it's just at the Republican committee
meeting. It was very strange.
It was very
one of the strangest moments of this year for me was when I was listening to that.
Well, it was very odd afterwards during part of it, because I was sitting there listening to it, and I know other people may not have been, but I was just, nothing else to do, and so I was listening to it. I know that's bad.
Other people may not have been listening to it.
But anyway, what he said, and I've just got to quote this, because he said, we know best, the balance of scales, all that. He said, in our free country, we're different from third world countries with political entities regularly intervene when the people and those who make the laws guide by dictate what the people have to live by. He said, that was indeed the system devised for governing the old Soviet empire. The hero of the political entity that instructed the lawmakers to do what they wanted, that is exactly the same system that this resolution seeks to institute. And I thought, well, now that's interesting. I've been called a lot of things in my time, but I have never been called a communist. And essentially that analogizes, asking people to support a resolution to being a communist entity.
Yeah.
And first of all, you have the apparent dislike for parties, and now you have that a resolution, just a voting for a resolution.
Saying this is what we believe. This is what we need to vote.
Lower taxes, less government intervention, and that makes you a communist because
it was odd.
It was really strange.
It was very strange, odd to oppose something like that. Now let me ask you this, Iris. You supported Senator Cooper, several years ago.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. 870-275-9799. As I told you earlier in the first hour of the program, we played for you a little bit of the tributes of the event yesterday at the Capitol for Senator Linda Collins, who was found murdered last week. And I guess it's today Wednesday, so it's been a full week since everybody has known of this terrible tragedy. And I wanted to bring in the president of the Family Council, Mr. Jerry Cox, on the line. Jerry, how are you this morning?
Well, we're doing okay. I had the honor and privilege of attending the event at the Capitol for Linda yesterday, and I thought Ken Yang and the other folks there did an excellent job. So I'm glad that people are coming out to honor her life and her legacy.
Yeah. I am as well, and it's really, I thought what Senator Missy Irvin said was fantastic, how she turned to the Bible, she opened this book, and I thought to myself, that in and of itself is such an encouragement, that in this time of tragedy, we have people turning to their Creator, turning to His Word for comfort, giving Him the glory. I feel like God was glorified yesterday in that event. What do you think, Jerry?
Oh yeah, I do too. It was very, very appropriate and very well done. I saw Linda a few times during the session, and I commented to people that she looked more rested and just more relaxed than I probably had ever seen her, because she was not having to put up with all the stuff out at the Capitol. As a lot of people know, she was defeated in her bid to return to the Senate, and I remember back in January, I was talking to her, and she mentioned that she was going to be moving the things out of her Senate office because she had lost the election. And so I asked her, I said, Linda, do you need any help moving your things? And she said, well, as a matter of fact, I do. And so I know my wife and I went down on a Sunday afternoon and met her at the Capitol and just helped her carry her things out and put them in her red truck and all that. And I think she was very much at peace with the fact that she was not going to be returning to the Senate, although I know it was her heart's desire to do that, but I think she had reconciled that. And so it was just a good time for us to visit with her and just help her out a little bit, and that kind of thing. And so the thing that I appreciate about Linda is that the people at the Capitol try to squeeze you into that political mold that they do with everybody. And Linda just would not fit into their political mold. And I thought that takes a lot of courage, and we need a lot more people at the Capitol who won't yield to the powers that be and put their head down and just go along to get along and not stand up for the right stuff. I'll give you an example. In 2019, we couldn't find anybody that would introduce a bathroom bill. The simple bill just to say that men got to go to the men's facilities, women got to go to the women's, and if it's publicly funded, the state would enforce that. Couldn't even find anybody that would do a bill like that in 2019. In 2017, when Linda was in the legislature, I wouldn't have tried, but we could not have stopped her from filing such a bill because she knew it was the right thing to do, even if it would anger the establishment, make people uncomfortable, all those things. She knew it was the right thing to do, so she just forged ahead and did it. And she filed that bill, and I watched as the establishment blocked her at every turn. They bottled that bill up in committee, and they would not let that bill come to a vote. And so, but Linda never held it against those people for doing her that way. She was one to forgive and forget and move on. Mm-hmm. And again, there are a lot of people at the Capitol that don't do that, and she would. And so there's so many good qualities that we could talk about.
Yeah. It was said to me yesterday at that event that if you are a former legislator, former colleague of Linda's, and you were not on good terms with her at this point, that was on you, because that wasn't on her. That maybe they got mad and decided to quit talking to her, but she would have never quit talking to them because that's just the way she was. You would fight on the specific issue and then you'd walk away. You could still be congenial afterwards, and that's why when I first found out about the news, Jerry, we're talking with Jerry Cox from the Family Council. I put on Twitter, that that's what everybody was doing, put at a suicide. But I wanted to genuinely express what I felt, and I just thought, I feel like her life was one that was marked by the love of Christ. She gave it to everybody around her, whether it was somebody she just met or somebody she knew for a long time. She wanted to know that you were okay, and wanted to know what made you tick, and she genuinely loved people. And I think that is such an encouraging thought, and I know where she is today. I know she's with Jesus.
Well, and yes, but I think she was genuinely at peace with all the people who did not like her, because she knew she didn't dislike them. It was not personal. And that just, when I see the way things are sometimes at the Capitol, it grieves my heart that people get this attitude, I will hurt you because you didn't vote for my bill, so I'm going to hurt you politically. I'm going to hurt you personally if I can. I will destroy your character if I get the opportunity. And I just think that is so un-Christ-like and so wrong. And I hope some of the people that treated Linda that way feel a sense of conviction about that. And I hope maybe in some way her life has maybe helped change some of the way that things are at the state capitol with people that have that attitude of just, I'm going to destroy my enemies. And Linda was never that way. She would fight you as hard as anybody on a bill and then walk out of there and be your friend. And that's the way it ought to be.
Yeah, and now we're at a point where my prayer has been over the last week to obviously be with the family, because as much of a loss as we feel with our friend not being here, the family obviously feels it more. But my secondary prayer is for these investigators that are trying to get to the bottom, because as hard as Linda fought for justice for the people of her district and the state, I'm hoping that there are investigators and people in positions of authority that will also fight for the truth no matter where it leads, that they just leave no stone unturned here and they keep going until they get the bottom of it, because, I mean, that's what Linda deserves.
Exactly. She absolutely deserves that. And, I just hope and pray that the investigation will be as thorough as it needs to be, and that, as you said, wherever it leads, that the justice will be served in this case. And so, like everyone else, we're all waiting and hoping that we'll get news that gives us some way to have a little bit of closure with this, because right now I feel like it's all so open. So, but I think in the meantime, we can honor Linda. She would say to us, "Oh, don't worry about me. I'm good."
She is, and she is very much so. That's right.
And all, but she sponsored pro-life legislation. She sponsored Second Amendment legislation. She fought for against the expansion of government. She did all the things really that her party, the Republican Party, says it stands for. She just went out and stood for it. And I just think, why can't we have more people in the legislature who have that kind of stand up and have backbone? And yet that system in the Capitol seeks to remove people like Linda, because let's face it, sometimes it's uncomfortable voting for the right stuff. Yeah. It makes makes things uncomfortable. So I just applaud her for her life, for having stood up, even back, Paul, when she was a member of the Democratic Party. She stood up against the Democrats. She was a Democrat when she first got elected, and they were so mean to her. I mean, she was a person without a country when she was out there that first term as a Democrat, and then she changed over and became a Republican. And lo and behold, she went against the grain in the Republican Party as well, and rightfully so. I'm glad she did.
Oh, me too. Jerry, I appreciate you coming on the program. It's always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your kind words about Linda, and we'll talk soon, and hopefully under better circumstances.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for having me on the program. It's always a pleasure.
All righty, Jerry Cox, everybody. You can find out more at familycouncil.org. If you want to know more about his great organization and the work that they do. I have heard from people, just so you know, in the wake of Linda's death, I have heard from politicians who they do feel like somebody's got to continue to do what she did. And I've heard from some that feel bad about what they haven't done. And the loss of... Now, this may just be a feeling, like a church summer camp feeling. I hope it's not. For those of you who went to church summer camp, you know what I'm talking about, right? The emotional highs that you get from that, and then, you know, and you just get pulled back in to this. You guys know what I'm talking about, especially my generation. But anyway, so I hope it's not some sort of summer camp feeling, but there are legislators who've reached out to me, and they say Linda's death inspires me to do more of what I know I should be doing that I haven't done, you know? And I hope that's the case, you know? That is such a minuscule thing in the grand scheme of what has happened, though, you know? Really, I haven't really mentioned it until now, just because, you know, political considerations at this point. I mean, it really kind of puts things into perspective, you know? It really does. Life and death matters tend to do that. And, you know, with what Jerry was saying there about wanting, you know, to destroy your enemies, and hopefully there are people that find some. I mean, to me, one of the verses I read yesterday was "Blessed are the peacemakers," and I just kept hearing that verse in my head while I was at that event. Blessed are the peacemakers, and there was peace there at that memorial service yesterday. There was the word of God was spoken. There was, you know, because Linda was such a Christian woman. When people talk about her, they couldn't help but talk about Christ. I mean, what a mark is of her life that is, you know, not in a religious service, not at the funeral, but at a political. I mean, what is a political gathering? It's all these politicians, and what are they talking about? They're talking about Jesus because of who she is. But I will just say, in terms of, you know, things that you do in the past, I mean, I make no bones about it. I want limited government. I'll tell you, I haven't always approached the way I communicate that to the people, the way I report. I'm not perfect. I'm not a saint. I certainly have gotten angry before. And so, as a matter of fact, I'll just say I'm chief among those in that regard of falling short. But I will say this. I mean, and Brian King said this earlier in the week. Just in terms of the conservative movement, the true conservative movement, continuing to take hits on the growth of government and everything else, and yet you have a remnant of Republicans that continue to try. The remnant dwindles and dwindles, and they keep trying, and it dwindles and dwindles. Brian said, you know, you get to the point you want to give up. But Linda, even in the defeat, would always be like, no, you got to keep going. And that's what Gary Stubblefield said yesterday, that if Linda were here, she would tell us to keep fighting, to continue to fight. Gary Stubblefield said that if Linda Collins were at Normandy on the landing crafts, she would have been the first one out of the boat yesterday, among other things. He talked about her Christian testimony and the spiritual conversations they had. Senator Missy Irvin read from Romans chapter 5. Therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have gained access by faith into his grace, in which we now stand, and we boast in the hope of the glory of God. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know, like the death of a friend, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who has been given to us. This verse was spoken yesterday at the Marble Palace. Our whiteboard yesterday, before that verse was spoken, says hope does not disappoint, taken directly from Romans chapter 5. So things are so much bigger than we can imagine. And while we ask ourselves, during the suffering and the loss of our friend Linda Collins, we ask ourselves, why did this happen, or how could this happen? And we know God's in control. We know that's the truth, but we still struggle with this idea of just senseless violence and meaninglessness, and we say, is it meaningless? And it's not meaningless. John Piper gave a sermon about meaninglessness one time where he said, it's not meaningless. Whether it's cancer or criticism, it's not meaningless. And we'll know that all someday, but it's hard to see through the lies of this world. You know, you want to believe the lies. But I will tell you this. It's comforting to me, at least, and it may not be comforting to you. But I know this much. If the events that have taken place so far that led us to the events of yesterday, if the events have taken place so far hadn't happened, that verse, and I know this doesn't give much comfort, the family, they'd rather have their mom back. I get it. But I'm just saying that would have never been read. That there are people that are turning to a higher power, turning to God, seeking answers during all of this that wouldn't have otherwise happened. Wouldn't have otherwise happened if we weren't to this point. And that still brings up even more questions. But I will just tell you this, I am encouraged because hope does not disappoint. And even in our sufferings, we know that the suffering produces perseverance. And another verse, God works all things together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. We're going to take a break. 870-275-9799 is telephone number. Let me know what you think. You can sound off right now, facebook.com/Conduit News. Go to conduitnews.com as well. Back in a minute.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
We walked streets, we gave money, we made phone calls. In other words, we were fully in to get him elected. We felt like he was a conservative candidate, that he would vote against some of the things that were going on in Little Rock at that time. And unfortunately, he wasn't down there too long when he really, he just disappointed us.
Yeah.
He supported especially the Obamacare. It wasn't Arkansas Works at that time, but it was the Medicaid expansion.
Yeah. Coincidentally enough, just so we're talking about this. He killed Senator Linda Collins' bill.
Yes.
That would have ended it.
Yes.
And he was the deciding vote after he ran a whole campaign. She brought forth the bill. It was a good bill to end the program, and he killed it. And it would, see, the thing is, if it would have gotten to the floor at that time, I think it would have passed. The Senate floor at that time, I think, would have voted to kill it.
And that was unfortunate because, we all know, and working at Conduit, how much.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Did anybody see the fake news from yesterday reported about our president? Well, I mean, it was another day, and so you probably, you know what I mean, you probably are tired of this. You expect it every single day. But Ryan Saavedra over from the Daily Wire, just a few people, apparently Trump had like a 7-minute press conference yesterday in front of the planes, you know, because he's one of the most open and transparent presidents in modern times when it comes to just, you know, shooting the bull with the press. He does this all the time. Obama hardly ever gave press conferences. When he did, he would take 2 or 3 questions, and that was it. Ryan Saavedra, just a few people that spread around the false claim that Trump waved around a blank piece of paper. You see, he said that there's an off-the-books or unpublicized agreement with Mexico, and he was waving around a piece of paper. The Washington Post said the piece of paper was blank. Talking Points memo editor said that the piece of paper was blank. Senior advisor to Hillary Clinton said the piece of paper was blank, and a CNN political analyst. However, a photo of the paper in the next tweet clearly shows that there is, and there's now multiple photos of this, that the photo actually is, the piece of paper actually has multiple lines of text on it. It looks like a full page of paper, written and signed. I think there's another thing where you can see somebody has signed something. Anyway, he says it's right here. But, of course, the media says it was a blank. He's lying. There's not a secret agreement with Mexico. It's a blank piece of paper. It's a blank piece of paper. And, of course, it wasn't a blank piece of paper. They hate this man. They hate this man. They are blinded by hatred. They can't even do their jobs. They can't even do their jobs. They're like a bunch of first graders trying to prove their teacher wrong. The news media are like a bunch of adolescent children trying to prove their teacher wrong. And it is just because they don't want to be there, they don't like the authority, they don't believe the teacher should have any authority, that they're illegitimate, they don't know what they're talking about. I mean, they're either adolescent children or they're teenagers. I mean, well, you take your pick. I'm sorry, they're either, first grade children or they're teenagers. Take your pick. It is insane. And as they're blinded by their hatred, they keep putting out these nets and these schemes that they think are going to work to take him down. And I will tell you this, they continue to fall into their own nets. Even now, the radical left in this country is willing, I feel like, to take a backseat to their radical views and support Joe Biden, even though they can't stand the man, just because they think he's the lesser of two evils of Trump. And even now they think, well, with Joe Biden, we'll get him. We'll be able to unseat him. There's even people right now listening to my voice that think, well, if Joe Biden runs, Trump doesn't have a chance of being reelected. There's people that are buying this. Well, you hear people say Trump hasn't expanded his coalition, all of that. How in the world do we even know if he's expanded his coalition? And if he has, how could you possibly know about it with the mainstream media the way they are? Folks, we live in an information blockade. We live in a world where the truth is not getting out. You understand this? And yet there are people who still are somehow why do you think the president, he needs to put down his sword? Why do you think he's tweeting? He's tweeting because he can get direct communication with you, the people. Because if he were to go to somebody like Anderson Cooper or whatever, and then rely on everybody to listen to Anderson Cooper or whoever, one of the NBC people, it doesn't matter. He knows that they're not going to accurately do their stories themselves are accurately. They can't possibly quote the president accurately because they'll edit the clips. Can you imagine if we didn't have the internet right now? Donald Trump would not be president without the internet. And I'm not talking about, Russians that were posting a few things I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about the freedom that the internet has. And that brings us to our meme of the day, which, do we have our meme up? Well, we're out of time. We've got 20 seconds. We got 10 seconds. There's the meme of the day. We'll post it at conduitnews.com. The Grim Reapers come after movies, come after late-night comedy. Now the Grim Reaper has come for YouTube. We'll post it at Conduit News on Twitter and Facebook.